What's going on? YouTube, listen up, young elder gang. This is Shalonda Lewis at you with another banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video, fam. I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes in this video. You will find history definitions, scripture information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning. The truth, keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best understand it today. Be sure to hit that like button, young elder gang, hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel, hit that bell, and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. The first, Romanus Pontifex, 1455, claimed all land for the Vatican, leasing it to monarchs. Romanus Pontifex, issued by Pope Nicholas V in 1455, was a papal bull that granted Portugal exclusive rights to explore, colonize, and trade along the African coast, and authorized the enslavement of non-Christians. It reinforced Portugal's colonial claims, prevented other European powers from interfering, and provided a legal and religious justification for the Portuguese Empire's expansion and the transatlantic slave trade. The bull granted the Portuguese Crown exclusive rights to discover, conquer, and colonize lands and trade in territories along the Atlantic coast of Africa and beyond. It confirmed the right to conquer the lands of Saracens, pagans, and other enemies of Christ, and to enslave their people. A primary purpose was to forbid other Christian nations from interfering with Portugal's activities in these regions. The bull invoked papal authority to regulate interactions between Christians and non-Christians, presenting the expansion and conquest as a religious mission to spread Christianity and combat infidels. It served as a foundational document for Portugal's colonial expansion, and later influenced other European powers, providing a legal basis for their own colonial claims and the doctrine of discovery. The kingdoms of Portugal and Castile had been jockeying for position and possession of colonial territories along the African coast for more than a century prior to Columbus's discovery of lands in the western seas. Around 1312, Genoese navigator Lancelot Malicello discovered the Canary Islands. The Portuguese traveled there in 1341 both to trade and raid. By 1346, slave raiding was occurring. However, the first attempt at permanent colonization was sponsored by the Castilians in 1402. During the 14th century, a variety of forces competed for control of the Canaries: Genoese, Catalan-Mallorcan, Castilian, and Portuguese. In the following century, Castile and Portugal were the primary contenders. On the theory that the Pope was an arbitrator between nations, each kingdom had sought and obtained papal bulls at various times to bolster its claims, on the grounds that its activities served to spread Christianity. The bull Romanus Pontifex is an important example of the papacy's claim to spiritual lordship of the whole world and of its role in regulating relations among Christian princes and between Christians and unbelievers, heathens and infidels. This bull became the basis for Portugal's later claim to lands in the New World, a claim which was countered by Castile and the bull Inter Caetera in 1493. In the early 15th century, the Portuguese searched for a sea route to India to participate in the spice trade. As a first step, Prince Henry the Navigator launched expeditions to explore the west coast of Africa. This experience exerted a deep impression, so that his reign later on was marked by an ambitious expansion that resulted in exploratory achievements. It led, however, to disputes between the Portuguese and the Castilians regarding control along the African coast. As an independent third party, the Pope would, on occasion, be asked to arbitrate disputes between kingdoms. On January 5, 1443, in the papal bull Rex Regum, Eugenius IV had taken a neutral position on the disputed claims of Castile and Portugal over territory in Africa. The Roman pontiff, successor of the key-bearer of the heavenly kingdom, and vicar of Jesus Christ, contemplating with a father's mind all the several climes of the world and the characteristics of all the nations dwelling in them, and seeking and desiring the salvation of all, wholesomely ordains and disposes upon careful deliberation those things which he sees will be agreeable to the divine majesty, and by which he may bring the sheep entrusted to him by God into the single divine fold, and may acquire for them the reward of eternal felicity, and obtain pardon for their souls. This we believe will more certainly come to pass, through the aid of the Lord, if we bestow suitable favors and special graces on those Catholic kings and princes, who, like athletes and intrepid champions of the Christian faith, as we know by the evidence of facts, not only restrain the savage excesses of the Saracens and of other infidels, enemies of the Christian name, but also for the defense and increase of the faith, vanquish them and their kingdoms and habitations, though situated in the remotest parts unknown to us, and subject them to their own temporal dominion, sparing no labor and expense, in order that those kings and princes, relieved of all obstacles, may be the more animated to the prosecution of so salutary and laudable a work. And the said infant, believing that he would best perform his duty to God in this matter, if by his effort and industry that sea might become navigable as far as to the Indians who are said to worship the name of Christ, and that thus he might be able to enter into relation with them, and to incite them to aid the Christians against the Saracens to conserve their right and possession, the said king and infante, under certain most severe penalties then expressed, have prohibited, and in general have ordained that none, unless with their sailors and ships, and on payment of a certain tribute, and with an express license previously obtained from the said king or infante, should presume to sail to the said provinces, or to trade in their ports, or to fish in the sea. Since we had formerly by other letters of ours granted among other things free and ample faculty to the aforesaid King Afonso, to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods, whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit, by having secured the said faculty, the said King Afonso, or, by his authority, the aforesaid Infante, justly and lawfully has acquired and possessed, and doth possess these islands, lands, harbors, and seas, and they do of right belong and pertain to the said King Afonso and his successors, nor without special license from King Afonso and his successors themselves has any other even of the faithful of Christ been entitled hitherto, nor is he by any means now entitled lawfully to meddle therewith. It was not until Afonso V of Portugal responded to a papal call for aid against the Turks, who eventually seized Constantinople in 1453, that Pope Nicholas V supported the Portuguese claims in the bull Dum Diversas. Nonetheless, in 1454, a fleet of caravels from Seville and Cadiz traded along the African coast, and upon their return were intercepted by a Portuguese squadron. One of the ships was captured with crew and cargo taken to Portugal. Enrique IV of Castile threatened war. Afonso V appealed to the Pope for moral support of Portugal's right to a monopoly of trade in lands she discovered. The bull, issued in January 1455, endorsed Portuguese possession of Ceuta, which they already held, and the exclusive right to trade, navigation, and fishing in the discovered lands. It provided an exemption from a canon law prohibition on trading with infidels. The papal bull Romanus Pontifex benefited elite bankers by providing the legal and ideological framework that sanctioned the vast economic opportunities generated by Portuguese colonial expansion, trade monopolies, and the development of the transatlantic slave trade. These activities funneled immense wealth back to Europe, which was then managed, lent, and multiplied by the major banking families of the era, such as the Florentine bankers, who already managed much of the papacy's finances. The bull granted Portugal an exclusive monopoly on trade, navigation, and fishing in the newly discovered lands along the West African coast. Elite bankers, who financed these expensive expeditions, were guaranteed a massive return on investment by eliminating competition from other European powers, like Castile. The legal certainty provided by the Pope minimized risk for these financiers. The bull provided the moral and legal authority that encouraged investment in Portuguese exploration and colonization efforts. Bankers provided the capital for building ships, hiring crews, and acquiring goods, with the explicit religious and legal backing of the Church, ensuring that their loans and investments were considered legitimate and divinely sanctioned. By granting the right to enslave Saracens and pagans in the conquered territories, the bull laid the groundwork for the highly profitable transatlantic slave trade. This created an entirely new market for human trafficking, generating enormous wealth that passed through the hands of the bankers who financed the ships and the associated industries. Renaissance-era bankers were already deeply intertwined with the papal court's finances, collecting taxes and managing funds. The wealth generated from the colonies, tied to an enterprise endorsed by the Pope, would flow into the same systems these bankers controlled. This increased the overall volume of capital they managed and provided them with opportunities to leverage this new wealth for further loans and investments, e.g., to monarchs and aristocrats. In a volatile political landscape, the papal bull acted as an international treaty, granting the King of Portugal and his financiers a powerful legal defense against rival nations. This stability was essential for long-term investments, which favored the elite bankers capable of handling large-scale, multi-year financial commitments. The Romanus Pontifex benefited the Pope's control by legitimizing his authority as an arbitrator of worldly and spiritual matters, consolidating power, and increasing his influence over monarchies and their colonial expansion. The papal bull granted Portugal the exclusive right to colonize and control trade in certain areas of Africa under the guise of spreading Christianity. This affirmed the Pope's spiritual lordship over all the world and his ability to grant exclusive rights, thereby ensuring the support and loyalty of European rulers who sought his blessing for their conquests. The bull was a powerful assertion of the Pope's claim to spiritual lordship over the entire world, not just within Christendom. By granting Portugal exclusive rights to lands along the African coast, the bull prevented other European powers from interfering and reinforced Portugal's position as the Pope's designated agent in the region. The document served as an ideological and legal basis for colonial endeavors, which in turn solidified the Pope's influence over the monarchies that carried them out. In exchange for political and territorial claims, the Portuguese king, Prince Henry the Navigator, offered to spread Christianity in the new lands. This created a mutually beneficial arrangement where the Pope gained a new source of influence and potential converts, while Portugal gained papal protection for its lucrative trade and conquest efforts. The papal bull Romanus Pontifex hurt indigenous people by providing religious and legal justification for the conquest and seizure of their lands, resources, and persons. The bull granted Christian monarchs the right to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans, and to take their possessions, leading to centuries of dispossession, violence, and slavery. This doctrine, which was used to colonize the Americas, Africa, and other parts of the world, also caused the suppression of indigenous cultures through policies of forced assimilation. Romanus Pontifex granted Christian rulers the right to conquer non-Christian lands and claim them as their own, dispossessing the indigenous people who lived there. It provided a legal framework for European expansion by framing it as a divinely sanctioned mission to spread Christianity and claim dominion over the world's unbelievers. The bull justified waging a just war against those who resisted the conquest, leading to violence and massacres. It explicitly permitted the enslavement of captured people, which led to the transatlantic slave trade and the forced labor of indigenous peoples. The actions justified by the bull resulted in forced assimilation policies that destroyed indigenous cultures and displaced communities. The doctrine of discovery, which Romanus Pontifex helped to establish, continued to be cited in legal contexts and contributed to ongoing issues such as the seizure of indigenous lands. The violence, displacement, and cultural destruction caused by the colonial era have had lasting intergenerational effects on indigenous peoples worldwide. The bull praises earlier Portuguese victories against the Muslims of North Africa and the success of expeditions of discovery and conquest to the Azores and to Africa, south of Cape Bojador. It also repeats earlier injunctions not to supply items useful in war such as weaponry, iron, or timber to either Muslims or non-Christians. In Dum Diversas, the European trade with Muslims was strictly prohibited, but Romanus Pontifex gave the King of Portugal an exception, provided that the trade did not include iron, weapons, and wood for building. Overall, there were the threats of ecclesiastical punishments, including excommunication and interdiction, for those who violate the provisions of the papal grant.